Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back. I'm here with Dee Salomon, CMO Media Link, and we have to talk about the entering of the post-advertising era. You entered Germany when?
Last night.
Last night, coming from?
Coming from New York via Belgium.
No jet lag so far?
I'm good.
You're good. And you have fantastic guests. We're looking forward. Ladies and gentlemen, please give a big round of applause for Dee Salomon and her guests. So welcome.
Thank you. Es war einmal, once upon a time, there were 5 exceptionally smart panelists. But before we delve into this story about storytelling, a little preface is in order. MediaLink has been covering brand storytelling, most commonly known as content marketing, for about 6 years, and has been mapping the rise of the technology that supports this storytelling. We're pleased to debut the latest in our series of content marketing landscapes here at dmexco. We can get that on the screen now, please. Showcasing US-based content creators, platforms for both creation and distribution, as well as data and insights. You can find this at medialink.com/content. And what you'll see is a crowded field of creators, distributors, technologists, and analysts, all perfecting their craft in a media world operating at the speed of the feed, the social media news feed, that is. Everyone seems to be in the storytelling game, and there are good reasons why. As attention moves to social media and to mobile, especially to apps, the containers for marketing messages have changed. Messages that are native to their context need different creative techniques, often requiring audience-centric versus brand-centric approaches. So now, to our exceptionally smart panelists who will elaborate on this timely topic, would you please come out? So I'll do some quick introductions. Stephanie Nagli is the founder of Nestle's Silicon Valley Innovation Outpost, a team that looks at identifying breakthrough digital innovation for Nestle. David Hayes is the head of creative strategy and entertainment evangelist of Tumblr. He oversees the platform's emerging initiatives and leads Canvas, a think tank for brands, as well as Creators, an art meets content collective featuring a selection of Tumblr's artists, makers, and builders. Jonathan Nelson is CEO of Omnicom Digital, where he is responsible for overseeing strategy for Omnicom's portfolio of digital assets globally. Bob Lord, president of AOL, overseeing AOL's industry-leading advertising, sales, and technology business, which reaches marketers and publishers in over 30 countries. And Yaron Galai is a seasoned entrepreneur, having launched several advertising technology companies, and is currently the co-founder and CEO of Outbrain. And Yaron, we were at dmexco on a panel together 2 years ago when I showed the content landscape then, and it was, I think now we have about twice as many companies as we did 2 years ago. So content marketing is big, and I think we're at the right place at the right time. So brand storytelling. It's a form of marketing, but it doesn't really always replace advertising. And we'll start with Nestle, the Stephanie, who represents Nestle, the brand on the panel. When do you decide that content marketing, that brand storytelling is the appropriate form of marketing? And really, how do you differentiate between brand storytelling and advertising?
Well, in my view, storytelling is really the art of creating a narrative that has deep roots in the core essence of a brand, but then puts the consumer, its interests and needs into the center. And if I think about my role, I'm part of Nestle's innovation team out in Silicon Valley. We look a lot at how consumers are changing through technology. How is consumer behavior influenced by technology, and what does that mean for brands? And we see that storytelling is becoming a really big opportunity for brands and something that brands are really interested in to explore, because consumers are more engaged with content when it's authentic, when it's true, and when they can relate to it. That's particularly true for digital natives like millennials, but for other consumers as well. And I think obviously it has a lot to do with technology. Content today has moved so close to us. If I think about this, but even a computer screen is so much closer to our personal space than a TV used to be. And we apply a much more rigorous filter of what comes in and out. And also, we are the curators of these content channels, right? We determine what gets into our YouTube channel or our Instagram feed. And brands, in that sense, need to compete with content from individuals, from our friends or storytellers that we admire. And that's why brands really need to take a more personal tone in telling their brand stories. I think one of the best examples we have in Nestle is our pet food brand Purina. They have created a series of videos called Dear Kitten, and they really use a very personal voice, creating a narrative that people can relate to, and it's very truth-based. So they've really been doing an excellent job, and they put the brand a little bit and the product a little bit into the background, and only using the product when it makes sense for the story. And they've generated, with the first video, 23 million views, and overall with the series, about 8 million. So maybe we can have a look at the video right now.
Let's look at the video. Can we cue the Nestle video, please?
Dear Kitten, since I have hissed at you the customary 437 times, it is now my duty as the head of the household to begrudgingly welcome you. Perhaps you are here to replace me, but I must do my duty and educate you on your new surroundings, as Maximilian once did for me. Rest in peace. Dear Kitten, this room here is basically a crapshoot. Either you get the petting of your life, and I'm in two hands, like you don't even know what's going on, or they just lie there and don't do anything. For hours, it's weird. Oh, and I should also point out, on special occasions, they will leave the underwear drawer open to signal their appreciation of me. Just to be clear, it's my spot. It's perfect in there. It's like sleeping surrounded by underwear. Well, that's exactly what it is. Dear Kitten, I remember when I could fit in a shoe. There's nothing like it. Being engulfed in 360 degrees of foot smell. Enjoy it while you can. Dear Kitten, because you are so small, you cannot jump, which is sad. Sad for you. But eventually you will, and you will find the places that I refer to as up. This will come in handy, especially around the human larva, which I know smells like milk, but can be a bit grabby. Dear Kitten, you should be aware that there are two kinds of food. The first is sort of a dehydrated brown niblet. I think they gave us these because they're training us to be astronauts. Just a guess. The second kind is wet food. It is so special they keep it in little armored metal casings that no claw can penetrate. With no claws to speak of, the humans can somehow open them. It's like some dark magic. Dear Kitten, I should warn you of the monster known as vacuum. It can eat and yell at the same time. And I've seen it eat everything. Seriously, like a paperclip and 2 cat toys. Didn't even flinch. To hide from vacuum, you may use the curtains of invisibility. Oh yeah, you're good. Good hiding. Oh boy. Dear Kitten, one final note. Once in a while you might see a little red dot. I'm going to tell you this right now. It is real, and it can be caught. I did it once. I held it for a full minute, but when I lifted my paws, it was gone. So Kitten, welcome to the household. You'll do just fine.
So it's great to work for a brand where you can legitimately use cat videos without being called out. Thank you for that. Jonathan, TBWA, BBDO, DDB, all award-winning Omnicom agencies that have created some truly memorable ad campaigns. How do you get your talent at creative agencies to move from a campaign orientation to an always-on orientation that brand storytelling really requires?
Sure. At Omnicom, we talk a lot about the mixture of art and science. And the science, of course, is the data, the media plans, the technology, everything that's feeding into this. And on the, not that that doesn't have an art to it, but the other side of it is communications, it's messaging, it's creativity. And what we're seeing is that the medium is changing, that the devices that people use are, of course, changing, that the internet's bringing all kinds of new communication channels. And what we're trying to do is really apply the same creative idea, the same focus on the work and the clients, but adapt it to a changing and new medium. And so it's hard because we have 80,000+ employees, but the challenges are there and the opportunity is there. So we're slowly changing.
Teach them how to make cat videos.
Teach them how to make cat videos. Everybody does that naturally, doesn't it? I know that I do.
Right. All right. Let's move to platforms. I'm interested in talking about which platforms are really well suited to brand storytelling, and we have several panelists who represent platforms of their own. David, we'll start with you. What makes Tumblr work especially well for brand storytelling?
So we have tons of cat videos as well as vacuums on Tumblr, so I'd say that's number one. I can't get that word out of my head now. Vacuum. So I think there's two things that make Tumblr an ideal location when it comes to content marketing campaigns for brands. And the first is that a lot of people may not realize this, but Tumblr is actually one of the older social networks out there, despite the fact that we're primarily known for having a large grip on millennials or youth culture. Did I do that?
I don't think so.
So we've been around for 8 years, and we've accepted all media types or art forms, whether that's long form or short form text, of course the animated GIF or GIF, depending on where we all sit. Short and long form video was just announced with a new video player in December. Photography, we have a whole rich media environment. More importantly than that, we have a user base that's trained in appreciating the whole range of assets that you might want to create for a content marketing campaign. So a brand is able to express themselves across all media forms, but they also have an audience that's primed to accept it, embrace it, collect it, and further it on. The second big thing about Tumblr that I think a lot of you might know is that you can build your website on Tumblr. That must be me. You can build your website on Tumblr. So if you have a campaign microsite, which all content marketing campaigns still have a headquarters, you can build it on Tumblr and have what we call a socially powered website. And we actually just had a big announcement this week with Nescafe. Do you want? I'll let you do it.
Well, yeah, we decided to move all Nescafe websites to Tumblr, so we're literally dumping our own assets in that way, but actually creating a new form of owned assets, but on Tumblr, to really kind of leverage the whole social capabilities of the platform.
Yeah, it's really fascinating. Brands get their own owned channel, but it's socially powered. And with every post that they make, every update that they make to their website, they're also spiraling that asset across the Tumblr network. So those are two great aspects, I think, when it comes to content marketing.
Thank you. Your own Outbrain is a content discovery platform, and you woke up the world to realizing that the headline, a great, well-crafted headline, not only works for magazines and newspapers, but works really well to pull people into content. What else is behind making content discovery really productive?
Yeah, so I started 2 ad companies before starting Outbrain. And what I realized there is that ads might create a lot of value for the marketers, but they don't necessarily create value for the consumers. That's what I felt, at least about myself. And so the idea with Outbrain was, how do we get the brand to be part of the flow of content discovery of what people came to consume, which is really content. When I'm reading a newspaper, a magazine, or a blog, the only thing you can really assume about me is that I'm interested in reading interesting content. And so for us, it's merging technology and science with all the data of what each individual person has been interested in, and through that tailoring the recommendations, whether it's other stories on the same publisher or it's marketer stories like the cat video that might be interesting for each individual. Great.
And Bob, what is it like to tell stories on the mobile screen? How does that change for brands?
Yeah, no, look, I think the huge opportunity now when we talk about storytelling, you can't talk about creating a brand story without talking about data and using data in a way that informs. So the great news about the mobile device is not only do you understand the content that somebody is consuming, but now you start to understand the context that they're in. You understand the environment that they're in, where they're located, and the more content that they consume, the more that you can serve them like content, which in the context that they're in. So quite honestly, somebody in London, you can serve them different content in that context versus somebody who's in the US. Having that rich information allows you then to go back to a brand advertiser to give them more information around the kind of advertising experience that they can serve on a mobile device. And the great news about mobile is as we all move to HTML5 and other technologies, the experience of the mobile ad unit actually starts to get very interactive. And the more interactive the ad is, the more likely you're going to have a great experience around the content and the context.
Well, you spoke a minute ago about data and the importance of that. And when I hear that from you, I automatically think of Huffington Post,
yes,
which of course uses data comprehensively in the creation and distribution of content. So how does AOL, how do you take those, that talent and get the rest of the organization engaged in using data?
Yeah, I think the Huffington Post is, number one of the largest global sort of news network outlets now, which is fantastic for us. And what we do is we use sort of the content ingestion, and we use basically native delivery through a technology called Gravity, where we sort of serve similar content and then serve similar native ad experiences in line of that content. So to the consumer, you sort of have a storyline that you're reading, you see more content around that, and then the ad is actually embedded in that content. So it feels like a seamless experience for it all. And as we move from text to mobile to video, you sort of see an evolution of how we use that technology to serve similar content, similar advertising.
Cool. Jonathan, Omnicom launched at South by Southwest this year Story Connect, which I think is a data-informed content experience. Could you explain how that works?
So Story Connect is really about listening to what's happening around us. We talk a lot at Omnicom about marketing at the speed of culture. And if you think about the internet, it's giving us all kinds of input, whether it's social input, whether it's videos, whether offline inputs. What Story Connect is doing is bringing all those inputs together and allowing us to sort of see the patterns, to see what is trending, both up and down, and to try to create. We use the data and use the visualization tools to create content that is in the flow, kind of exactly what Bob was talking about, where we can see what's happening and then create communication messages that are, in many cases, real-time and evolving with the audience as it's essentially telling us what it wants to see.
Interesting. So this stuff is all really, really new. And certainly we have to think about how, from an operating framework, we organize our talent, what kind of talent we need, what kind of marketing departments do we create. And so, just to open it up to the group, how do you really organize marketing departments to tell stories instead of think about campaigns and advertising? How does that work? How does it work at Nestle?
So, if you think about talent and building digital capabilities in a big organization and a very decentralized organization as Nestle, we really need to think about a principle that is working within a network and that can scale and grow really quickly. So at Nestle, we basically focus on 3 key pillars. We call it the innovation trifecta. But the first pillar is really about building the internal skills and knowledge. And we have built this program called the Digital Acceleration Team. And it's a team where digital leaders from all around the world come together on a mission assignment for 8 months in Switzerland, and then learn about everything they can when it comes to digital. And they go through this really ample agenda and learn these different skill sets. And storytelling, interestingly, is something that is just so embedded with how they communicate, because they spend a lot of time with storytelling experts, from Tumblr, from Snapchat, from Pinterest. People come and spend time with them in the HQ and really teach them about storytelling from this different channel perspective. And when those teams go back, when these people go back to their home markets, they apply the knowledge and the skills they learned, eventually open local acceleration teams, the innovation acceleration teams there. So that's really, how we're trying to scale that. On the other side, we're also trying to bring in external innovation and digital innovation, these capabilities into the company, and that's mostly what my team is doing. We're scouting for new trends and technologies, but then also startup partnerships. And in the storytelling area, we've been really focused on how can we engage with storytellers, professional storytellers at scale, creating authentic content pieces. And one of the companies that we've been working with, it's called Linkia. It's basically exactly that. They create a platform to engage with professional storytellers at scale. And we work with our baking brand called Toll House. And it's been really, really interesting, how can you target this baking enthusiasts on different channels and blogs. And we used Linkia, and there were about 2,000 pieces of content that were created in 3 weeks, and we reached 25 million people. So that's really the scale that you can get at. And the last piece of of how we approach developing these skills is really through an internal tool called Chatter. And it's a little bit like Facebook, but focused on businesses and focused on knowledge sharing. And we use the tool, for every employee basically to create stories about their projects that they're working on. And our head of digital, Pete Blackshaw, he's been really focusing on the tool and making sure the content is relevant. And I can't tell, how many times he's nudging people off. Use a good headline, make your own video, make sure there's a story behind the post. But it's really important because in this way, we on our own are becoming storytellers and are learning storytelling skills. So I think it's really kind of how it comes together.
That's lovely. Anybody else?
Listen, I think the really important skill set that you need now in any sort of marketing department is somebody who understands how to create a story, but also understands technology. And if you really think about technology, technology is a whole new sort of palette that hasn't been available to us for the creative world in a very long time. So if you sort of go down the old way of telling a story without understanding what a Tumblr does or what an Outbrain does, and you don't have that knowledge, your story is very limited. It's almost like we were coloring in black and white for a very, very long time. And now technology has come in and you all of a sudden have this beautiful palette of colors that you can explore on. The challenge is finding somebody that understands the breadth of technology so they don't get siloed into just one platform, because more and more technology comes into it. So the younger generation is very docile in how they use social media and technology. And I think that kind of injection that counterbalances the experience in storytelling and the age-old art of storytelling is really what you really need in the collaborative mix in a marketing organization.
Yeah. We have a great haiku that I'm absolutely going to mess up, but it's basically a summary of what Bob said here, which is if you wrote a great post and no one read it, did you write a great post?
Right.
And so I do think that the marrying of both things is critical. And I think there's this saying of brands as publishers, which I'm not a big believer in, actually. I think of publishers as publishers, and I think there's so much art that goes into understanding the audience and what's going to be engaging content. And I think some of the smartest publishers these days are partnering with the brands and creating some of the best brand journalism out there.
Well, you're the content technology platform on the panel. So when it comes to adoption of technology, what are the hurdles that you face in working with brands to get them to wake up to what Bob said is, really the necessary component of of the whole thing.
Yeah, there's not many technology hurdles to having brands adopt content marketing and content discovery at scale. I think probably there's the mental hurdle of we're used to doing things in a certain way and RFPs are structured in a certain way, and suddenly content marketing is a little looser and wilder in terms of, there's not a form like this and a form like this, so there's a state of mind issue. I think probably the biggest challenge is on attribution, because much of content marketing is high in the funnel and is about awareness of people not knowing about the, I'm sure a bunch of people just found out about the Friskies brand through that video. The only way to tell that story and get the awareness is through content marketing, but then measuring how many people here in the next 5 years are going to buy that brand is very difficult. Now, I'm sure there are people that are not going to be able to forget Vacuum and the kitten, and it may not have a kitten right now, but in 2 years they will, and they'll buy this brand. But it's very hard to do the attribution. So I think that's probably the biggest challenge that brands face in content marketing and storytelling.
One of the things that we deal with all the time when we're talking to brands is, and it's fascinating when you see the light bulb go off for the brand. Like, nothing gives you more pleasure when you encourage them to, for example, post once a day for 30 straight days. Don't spend any media at all. Just sit back and let natural organic engagement, i.e. all button clicks and taps, flood onto the content, and then let the user base, right, the community actually tell you which posts to then selectively amplify through media. And we bring this down to this idea, which is use social media as your focus group. It allows you to make smarter decisions, it allows you to move faster, it allows you to bake that postmortem in at day one, because you already know you're amplifying only the very best stuff. And it's not as sophisticated a form of data or technology than what you guys offer, but it's lean, and you see people using it all the time to basically guide their next decisions. It's just what are all the buttons and clicks telling us right now, and how can we optimize every day, every week, and so on?
Yeah, I think we're in the next chapter of storytelling. I actually think when you look towards the future of storytelling, it's all about sort of the rapid exchange of the content pieces in the story. So if you really think about, we know the placement, we know the message, that message is going to work very well for some people and not other people. And you're going to be able to pull tribes together that you can rapidly iterate on those messages. So we're just experimenting with that right now. It's sort of like we launched something called One Creative, and it's all about changing sort of the placement of the ads and what it looks like, just to rapidly do that. But when we do that, we know that there's a bigger click-through rate. So we've got placement nailed. Now it's all about the iteration. The same concept will apply to storytelling. So which of your cat things are working the best for that audience, you're going to continue to rapidly iterate on that. And there's no way to get around it, but you're going to have to use technology to do that. So you need a story platform. Creating that story platform for the creative groups are going to be a lot harder, because you're going to have to think of many iterations in order to capitalize on that.
So the one person who hasn't answered this question, I think there's so many people in this room who are probably really interested to know how you make decisions about technology, because of course we're in a conference where there's hundreds, if not thousands, of technology sellers. So what are the quick criteria for you?
Yeah, I mean, as part of my role, I'm basically, think every day about how can we create digital technology adoption, and how can we institutionalize some of test and learns. And I really believe that, the opportunity today is there's so many new solutions and technology out there, but you're not going to find the one single bullet, right? It's really about testing out what works for your brand, and start small and test your way up. And this is really this pilot-driven approach that we are doing with our Silicon Valley Innovation Outpost and with the brand teams and the startups. And what I see is, oftentimes there's, there's risk associated with new technologies, because people don't know how it's going to work, what's the ROI is going to be. And one of the things that we started to implement is, creating a matching fund, where when a brand kind of says, yes, I do want to test out this new solution, then our team kind of co-finances that first set of pilot. Because from that, you will create learning, and you can share that case study with other brands, and other brand team will see oh, that's how it works. Yeah, maybe I could do that too. And then you really kind of create that effect that more brands are jumping on board. And then, really importantly, it's also about creating awareness within the executive teams. And really giving the brands the permission to test out new things and to innovate. Because if they don't have the incentive, like if they're not incentivized and don't get the permission, I think from the executive team, then you will always have kind of that lag time. So.
Okay, I think we're going to have to leave it there. Like all good stories, may our panelists and our audience live happily ever after. Thank you very much for everything today. Thank you very much for joining us today.
Thanks so much.
Thanks.